All right, good evening, class. This is your professor, Dr. Jace Austin, and welcome to week number 4, or unit number 4, for your non-443, the Academic Libraries class. Here at Mizzou, we are recording this on February the 11th, 2019. And your module this week is for governance. So you will be reading chapter 4 in Dr. Budd's book, The Library as One Department or College on Campus, how the campus is managed, who makes decisions, how money is allocated, how curriculum and other factors affect the library, why it is important for academic librarians to know how the academy is managed. So you have that chapter from Dr. Budd. You also have this white paper from University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And I did want to remind you all that your first assignment will be due on the 17th. Let's make sure that this white paper is accessible. Okay, hold on. Because I know that there is a good link somewhere. Okay, well, in your modules for week 4, if you scroll down, so we have Unit 4 Governance here, and then this link, even though it is not loading here, if you are to click it here, then you will be brought to that white paper there. Okay. And you can download it from here. And this will be part of your assignment reading. Okay. Alright, so you have plenty of reading on governance, and so I am going to allow you to let your reading take over when it comes to governance. Let's head over to the discussion board real quick and just make sure there's nothing we don't need to check out there. And we're going to talk a little bit about makerspaces, okay? Alright, so let me just make sure that nothing popped up in here that we need. Let's see. Okay, yeah, there has been a question about the assignment, this first assignment, whether or not you use a mission statement for an existing library or you create a mission statement. That's fine, whichever you prefer. Let's see. The notes with John Budd's articles are optional. Okay. Alright, and yes, go by the syllabus, but as you have just seen, updated links may be in the module area. Okay? So if you can't access something in the syllabus, you might want to go to the modules and see if there's a new link. That's generally where I'm probably going to put the new links. I'll try to put them in both, but they should definitely be in the modules area. So let's talk about makerspaces really quick, just to make sure that you all know what they are. Okay, so I'm sure a lot of you have heard makerspace. Makerspace, what's a makerspace? You're hearing it. It's a big buzz term within libraries right now. And a lot of times when you hear about makerspaces, you are hearing about them in the context of children's libraries, well, public libraries, and specifically spaces for children. But there are academic library makerspaces as well. And so we are going to borrow from a few pieces that are available to learn what makerspaces are and what some pros and cons of makerspaces may be for academic libraries. And again, the reason why I choose these subtopics for you all, outside of the normal reading and everything, is to kind of give you a more well-rounded view of libraries, especially library trends. You may be asked about some of these things when you apply for jobs. So, intro. The purpose of this presentation And this is not my presentation, by the way. So this is from, I don't know quite how to pronounce that. I guess it's Demetrius Thompson at Georgia Southern University. Thompson is a librarian there. And this was delivered at the Code for Libraries Southeast Conference back in July of last year. So the purpose of Thompson's presentation is to share the findings of a recently conducted research project that was focused on current trends in academic library makerspaces. So, first of all, if you don't remember anything else that I go over today, which I hope you will, but if you don't, know what a makerspace is. So, makerspaces are places or spaces where people come together to share knowledge and resources, to collaborate on ideas and concepts, and to create and innovate. Now, the purposes and objectives of Thompson's study was to explore the technologies, services, and operational practices that are available and in use in academic library makerspaces. The primary objective was to identify common trends and translate those trends into recommendations for academic libraries that may be considering makerspaces within their facilities. All right, so you have two research questions in Thompson's research here. What are the common technologies in academic library makerspaces, and what are the common operational practices among academic library makerspaces? Now, if you want to view this yourself, because I'm going to be skipping methodology and those sorts of things, so if you want to view that yourself, you have a URL here, and you can copy that. But I'm going to be skipping over method and things like that. And in fact, before we dive into these results, we probably need to get a fuller picture of what a makerspace is, because that definition was kind of simplistic. Okay, so one piece that you may want to look at outside of the Thompson study that we were just looking at, if you want to get some background, this was published, it's by John Burke, and it was published by ACRL here. And so you've got it's from 2015, and you've got kind of a little explanation for what makerspaces are and the history of them. And what I want to do is scroll down to see who John Burke might be. Oh, and it's not there. Okay. Oh, there we go. So John Burke is a library director at Miami University, Middletown, and his contact information is right there. So loosely, library makerspaces have been around since about 2005. That's when the concept began, and continuing into 2013, what we've got here. A 2013 survey of library makerspaces by this author shed some further light on the state of library makerspaces. He had a survey with 109 librarians responding to a web-based survey, and respondents, well, this tells us more about the respondents. But we had 36% of the respondents were coming from academic libraries. So again, even though public libraries seem to dominate a lot of the literature about makerspaces, especially public libraries serving children, it seems to be kind of a children's oriented kind of initiative as it's presented in the literature a lot. There are a lot of uses for makerspace technology and makerspace areas in academic libraries. Now we're going to scroll down and look at what some of the activities are that students take part of in makerspaces. So you'll see in table 1 here, and this is not limited just to academic libraries, but you'll see table 1 makerspace technologies here, and some of the more popular activities that are undertaken in makerspaces. You will Probably, and I'm going to go through these point by point and just give my own kind of, uh, I don't know, give my own opinion or assessment as to what we're looking at here and how relatable it is to academic libraries in particular. So computer workstations, a lot of times you're going to have those all throughout academic libraries. So you're probably not going to have a separate workstation specifically designed for a makerspace. A makerspace in an academic library may include a computer workstation, but it's more than likely not the drawing feature there. 3D printing and 3D scanning, actually. Those are things that may be available in your academic library makerspace areas. Photo editing, a lot of times you will have a pre-existing sort of lab in an academic library that has things like Photoshop and some of these other resources that can be used. R is another one. I think that R is for now I can't remember if R is for statistics or if it's for photo editing. Let me look that up really quick. And I am sorry, I was wrong about that. So R is I apologize for that. R is a open source quantitative research tool. What I was thinking of as far as open source photo editing is actually called GIMP. So GIMP might be something that you might find in one of these makerspaces, but a lot of academic libraries, or a lot of, I should say, academic campuses, maybe inside or outside of the library, a lot of times they have access to Photoshop and video editing software as well. But again, there is going to be that opportunity, hopefully, to do video editing in your makerspace in your academic library. That's going to depend on what the vision is of the makerspace among the library staff, as well as the provost or anyone else who is directing the library to get a makerspace. Computer programming, again, that's probably something that is done in a particular area on campus. It may not be designated to the all-student makerspace. Arts and crafts, however, that could be something that is relegated to your makerspace on your academic library. Again, that's just going to be up to the vision of those who put together the makerspace for your academic library. Scanning photos and digitization and those sorts of things, yes, that's typically going to be a makerspace function. Creating a website or online portfolio, makerspace is a good place to do that if that's a feature of your academic library makerspace. Digital music recording, I have not seen an academic library that does this, but that doesn't mean that it isn't done. A lot of times, if you have a school with a music program, a lot of times you'll have a music library. Whether or not you're actually recording in that music library, I don't know, but a lot of times it's there. 3D modeling, that goes with the 3D printing and scanning. A lot of times that will be in your makerspace area. I'm actually not sure what this is. If somebody else knows, they are welcome to chime in. Animation, yes, that would, if you have the software and the components to do that as a school, then the makerspace is one place where students would probably work to do that. High quality scanner, absolutely. Tinkering with anything, making edits and that sort of thing with any kind of media, again, that would probably be a makerspace sort of endeavor. And one thing that we'll see from this quote here, when academic library responses were isolated from the author's survey, they illustrate something of a different focus entirely. Table 2 shows a list of the most common activities and technologies from academic library makerspaces. There are stronger showings for creative activities resulting in digital products such as websites, digital photos, programs, apps, and games. This here says that arts and crafts was dropped from the list entirely. Maybe students, maybe public school students at the K-12 level are taking more advantage of that in the public library space. But um, it is something that I believe is part of the idea for the upcoming makerspace that Coastal Carolina, where I worked prior to coming here, that they are going to sign up on that. So what we have here, this table is specifically for academic libraries. Okay. As opposed to the earlier one being more general. So academic library is what we've got here. Computer workstations, again, I don't think that those are necessarily a pull for workers, for makerspaces specifically. I think that makerspaces may have computer workstations in them, but you'll see computer workstations throughout most, or I should at least say many, academic libraries. Photo editing, 3D printing, creating websites and portfolios, video editing, scanning photos to digital copies, 3D modeling, the high quality scanner, computer programming and software. Yeah, that's something that you're probably not going to see a whole lot of in your public libraries. So when that becomes a makerspace response, that's probably in academic libraries. Digital music recording, again, I haven't seen that really in academic makerspaces that I'm familiar with. But that doesn't mean that it's not happening. Animation, creating apps, creating games, prototyping, VHS conversion equipment, I guess that is a pretty good one. Those VCRs are being phased out, and electronic music programming. So those are common academic library makerspace activities and functions, okay? And so yeah, your just to put it mildly or put it briefly, your makerspace can be just the sort of space where this type of activity is going on. Usually these are collaborative spaces where people can work as small groups or teams in order to get this type of function done. So let's see. Let's take a quick look, because we should probably also get an idea or illustration of what an academic library makerspace would actually look like. So let's see what we've got from San Diego State University, the return on investment of sustaining an academic library makerspace. So this came out of San Diego State. I did first just want to show a picture. So this is the makerspace at San Diego State University Library. Call it Build It, Explore, Build, and Educate. And so you've got a picture here. Some look cleaner than others here, but this one looks like a place where a lot of hard work goes on. But you can see you've got your 3D scanning here. Probably got a number of other things that if we were to actually be able to enter this room, we could see a lot of other neat stuff. Here are some more pictures right here. Technical Urbanism for Librarians from Kieran Monroe. So I guess we've got some sort of start to finish here thing. I'm not sure. But the main bullet here that I wanted to highlight would be a tolerance for error and perceived failure. So a lot of what's going to go on in these makerspaces are going to be things that are not successful in their first incarnation, and that is quite all right. What would be the librarian's role in a makerspace? So, I've seen a few makerspace jobs. Actually, let's see if we can do something with that. Let's see. just curious now. No. Okay. Yeah, definitely not seeing much there. Let's see. Alright, so this isn't termed an actual makerspace librarian position. That's not what it is, I guess. But the person who is hired for this job will need to have competency with makerspace technologies. So that seems to be the thing going on right there. So right now I'm not seeing an actual right now I'm not seeing an actual makerspace librarian job being advertised. However, having said that, what would the librarian's role be in a makerspace? Makerspaces, a beneficial new service for academic libraries. Key question for academic library makerspaces is, key question for academic library services is whether the makerspace itself is is somewhere learning support from librarians can be embedded. I would say yes. That's going to be one of your future kind of debates, is who is actually staffing makerspaces. We had that debate at Coastal Carolina as we were planning for ours. There was some division as to whether or not just a staff person with technology skills would be enough for maintaining that space, or if they wanted somebody with a library science degree. And that question was not resolved by the time that I left. So that's going to be one of those debates. You're probably going to see some libraries that have an actual makerspace librarian, and then some that put a staff worker in charge, but that staff worker may not actually be someone with a library science degree and librarian rank. And now that we've taken our little detour, I'm going to come back to the Thompson study. Hopefully that isn't too confusing for you. So with Thompson's findings, and again, this was a research endeavor launched by somebody from Georgia Southern University about makerspaces. And let me just make sure, yes, in academic libraries. So, as far as required training, I'm not exactly sure. I could reach out to Ms. Thompson. I don't know if this is for staff or students, as far as was training required before students could even use, or as this was training required for staff that was being assigned to the makerspace. But either way, most require training. So if these are the employees, then what you're finding here is that this isn't training that they are coming with right out of library school. They need to be trained on the equipment. If this is whether or not students are required to train, then you're seeing that the vast majority of the students are probably not already familiar with these technologies at these makerspaces. As far as written usage policies, I would just go ahead and say that if you do have any specialized space in your library, you probably want to have some sort of written usage policy, okay? So there's a reason why the overwhelming majority had one present. Staffing model. So only 6% used a library faculty or faculty librarians. It looks like the overwhelming majority of those surveyed used some form of library staff, which would usually be your paraprofessionals, in order to staff the makerspace. And the advantages of that would probably be, this person is probably cheaper. This doesn't take away a skilled researcher or a skilled cataloger with a degree from their functions in order to be dedicated to this particular function. Okay. As far as access, the overwhelming majority could be used by faculty, staff, and students, but there were some students-only makerspaces that were being offered at some institutions. I prefer the route of letting faculty and staff have access to most of what students have access to on campus outside of things like student life and those sorts of things. We've already talked about some of the technologies used, but you can go through and see that similar 3D printing, electronic scanning, cutter stations for vinyl, audiovisual services, and that sort of thing going down and down. Woodworking. So remember when we talked about arts and crafts, that had completely disappeared from the list of John Burke, but it has not disappeared here. Okay. Common operational practices would include mandatory training. They are managed by library staff as opposed to faculty librarians. Access through the entire university community usually, and not just students. Again, mandatory training for either those who staff it or those who use it, and established user policies. Okay, so that just kind of wraps up what we saw in those earlier slides. Challenges to establishing a makerspace in an academic library. What is its purpose? Usually the purpose is collaborative creation. And so that's what I would say is the purpose in most of these cases. Collaborative creation. How would it be paid for? That is a debate that every library is going to have. If I were instructed to establish a makerspace by the provost, then I would want some money from the provost's office for it. Don't strap my library with that mandate, but then not give me the funding for it. Where will it be located? I do think that locating it within the walls of the library is best. What are the policies? One thing you probably want to make sure, these are usually collaborative spaces, so there needs to be some level of talking aloud, probably. Who would staff it? I would love to have a faculty librarian, honestly, do it, but I can see the advantages of paying somebody who doesn't have the degree a little less to be the makerspace specialist. But I would love for my faculty librarian to also be somebody who could research the makerspace, who could go to conferences and present on it, and so forth and so on. Is it sustainable? That's going to be a case-by-case basis. And who are the eligible users? Again, I prefer allowing faculty, staff, and students to be users. Cost considerations, these are the things you gotta buy. You gotta buy the hardware and the software and the hand tools, and possibly also safety equipment. So don't really need to go into the recommendations for further studies unless you are trying to accomplish one of the future studies. But recommendations, yes, establish written usage policies, develop a strategy for information dissemination, train and hire specific staff to manage the space, maybe hire a technology librarian or an emerging technologies librarian. Consider allowing access to faculty and staff. That's what I would do. And no sources of funding. You are probably going to have to write grants to get some of the equipment, for one thing, if you undertake one of these endeavors all on your own. So this is a basic rundown of makerspaces. Again, this is something that I wanted you all to know a little bit more about. And please, by all means, go and look up some literature on your own for more information about makerspaces. But as you go on the academic library job market, these are some things that you need to be aware of, just like the framework, just like open access. Makerspaces are something you're going to need to know. All right. Thanks for your attention. Have a good one.